Xeodrifter is the latest retro-themed title from the primarily Nintendo-focused indie developer Renegade Kid, who is perhaps best known for the excellent 3DS and Wii U eShop title Mutant Mudds. Like that game, Xeodrifter is light on setup, story, and extra trappings, and prefers to throw you right into the action pretty much from the moment you press start, which is refreshing in this age of long introductory cinematics and cutscenes. In Xeodrifter, you play as a nameless space explorer who must repair his ship after its warp core is damaged in a collision with an errant asteroid. A scan of 4 nearby planets reveals a number of large energy signatures that could turn out to be a replacement warp core, and suddenly our intrepid space explorer is off to investigate the planets and track down the sources of those energy signatures. Where Mutant Mudds was more deliberate and methodical in its approach to 2D platforming, much like Mega Man, Xeodrifter takes more of a Metroid-style run-and-gun approach. Our hero is light on his feet and his jumps are rather floaty. Super Meat Boy with a gun would not be an unfair way to describe how Xeodrifter plays, but instead of taking place across a series of linear levels, Xeodrifter is basically a Metroidvania title in the way it challenges you to explore 4 labyrinthine planets in a fairly non-linear fashion. When you first start out, your actions are limited solely to running, jumping, and shooting, and as such you'll encounter many areas that are just barely and very tantalizingly out of reach. But as you progress through the game, you gradually unlock 6 abilities, such as rocket jumping and high-speed running, that will let you access those previously unreachable areas and explore ever further into the game's 4 planets. The most notable and important of these abilities is the one that lets you jump between the foreground and background. This was a core mechanic in Mutant Mudds as well, but whereas that game only let you jump between planes at certain platforms, here you're able to do it on command, which makes things a little more challenging. The smartly designed labyrinths often require you to figure out when and when not to jump between the foreground and background planes to progress, forcing you to think a little more laterally than you might be used to in 2D platformers. For those of you who play your 3DS primarily with the 3D slider off, I'd recommend turning it on for Xeodrifter. Jumping between the foreground and background with the 3D on has a kind of gee-whiz factor that never really wears off. Xeodrifter presents an old-school challenge level to go along with its retro aesthetic. You might be surprised by just how unforgiving Xeodrifter can be when you first start out. Your gun is weak, you can only take a maximum of 2 hits before dying, and checkpoints are very few and far between, pretty much occurring only before and after boss fights. On top of that, you can only save the game when you're aboard your ship, so dying carries with it the old-school penalty of having to re-explore any ground you covered and recollect any power-ups you found before perishing. Of course, like any good Metroidvania title, the going gets easier as you track down power-ups, which in Xeodrifter come in the form of health meter and gun expansions. These usually serve as rewards for using newly acquired abilities to explore further into previously unreachable areas. While this means you'll be doing a fair bit of backtracking to obstacles that were once impassable each time you acquire a new ability, that's exactly what fans of this genre expect, so I'm not complaining. The game's maps, conveniently displayed on the touchscreen at all times, also help you keep clear track of where you've been and where you haven't, so you never have to wander aimlessly and try to remember where to backtrack to. Besides, the rewards are well worth it. Each health expansion lets you take 1 more hit before expiring, and each gun expansion gives you 1 point to allocate toward powering up your fully customizable gun in one of 5 ways, including bullet speed, power, and rate of fire. There aren't enough gun expansions in the game to max out your gun in each of the 5 categories, but you can reallocate points whenever you want, and you're also able to switch between 3 custom gun setups in order to deal with various situations as you encounter them. Switching between setups is done with a simple tap of the touchscreen, so this is a smart and convenient feature. As good as Xeodrifter's core gameplay is, the game falls short in 2 major areas, length and overall variety. Not only was I able to finish the whole game and find most of the optional power-ups in a single 3.5-hour sitting, there is a troubling lack of enemy variety considering how incredibly short the game is. You face many of the same enemies throughout the game's 4 planets, and there's only 1 boss in Xeodrifter, a boss you fight 7 times no less, with it becoming just a little harder and maybe having a new attack or pattern variation each time. This is uniformly disappointing, especially because that 1 boss is actually pretty fun to fight. I can only imagine how much more fun Xeodrifter would have been with even 2 or 3 different bosses to mix things up. Xeodrifter features exactly the kind of 8-bit soundtrack you'd expect from a retro run-and-gun title, but it's disappointingly forgettable. I'm hard-pressed to recall even a single song I heard throughout the whole game, and I'm a huge fan of video game music. The soundtrack just isn't inspired at all, which is really a shame considering all the catchy 8-bit anthems found in Mutant Mudds' soundtrack. On the other hand, the appropriately retro, crunchy sound effects do get the job done, and the game's colorful, clean pixel graphics are well animated and look great. Xeodrifter's use of stereoscopic 3D is particularly impressive, and like I said before, I wholeheartedly recommend that you play it with the 3D slider all the way on. Xeodrifter is a great retro run-and-gun experience that sadly ends just as it feels like it's really hitting its stride. The game is over almost as soon as you acquire your 6th and final ability, and that last ability barely even sees any use. Xeodrifter's lack of enemy and especially boss variety further casts the game's brevity in a negative light. Despite that, however, I liked Xeodrifter and had a great time with it for as long as it lasted. While the $10 price tag does feel a bit steep considering how short the game is, don't let that stop you. It's precisely because Xeodrifter is so fun to play that I wish it lasted longer, and fans of retro games and the run and gun genre are sure to enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Xeodrifter and all things gaming.